Greetings, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Bet Like No One's Watching podcast. I am John Sullivan. You may know me as Buffalo66 if you play daily fantasy. You may know me from my Twitter page, Buffalo Hold'em, and you can also check out our website for this podcast at blnowpod.com. And this is the fourth episode of the podcast, and the last time I talked to you directly without a guest, we talked about the football orgy of September and how there's CFL and NFL and college football all over the place. And I'm going to talk some more about football. And I'm going to talk a little bit about results and how to interpret your results when it's not just profitability. I did not have a great weekend in football this week. I'm going to go through them, my bets just a little bit. I went 1-3 in college football this weekend. I played 3 totals and Rutgers -2, and Rutgers lost with 13 seconds left. And the 3 totals, they all were won or lost in the last 3 minutes of the game. I had under for the Syracuse game, and they scored with 3 minutes left. I had over in the Florida game, and that went over with about 3 minutes left. And I had under in the Temple Cincinnati game, and that also went over with about 2.5 minutes left. So could have very easily gone the other way, but when we look at these, we're going to look at these more in depth in a minute. But after 2-2 week 1, so that puts me at 3-5 on the season in college. I went 1-2 in the NFL. I won on Green Bay. I lost my Green Bay Tampa Bay parlay. I shut that Tampa Bay game off right after it was 14-0. I knew that was not going in the right direction there, and I lost my over on the Denver game. So I went 1-2 in NFL, and I had one CFL play. I played the over in the Saturday night CFL game, and it fell a couple points short. The weather was a little worse than I thought it was going to be. It said 50% intermittent showers, and it rained pretty much the whole game. But Calgary was driving in the red zone with about 6 minutes left, and they threw an interception. A touchdown there would have gave me that one. I'm 0-2 in September for CFL, but 14-8 on the season is still pretty respectable. But I had a 2-6 week overall in football, and on the surface, that's pretty damn horrible. But if you look at it in another metric, did I beat the closing line or did I get the best number? And of the 8 wagers I made, 6 of them either beat the closing line or I got the best number overall. And the difference between that is, if I had under 44 in the Syracuse game, and it ended up at 41.5. So I think it might have gone to 44.5 at one point for a hot minute. So I didn't get the best number, but I did beat the closing line by 2.5 points. Several of the other games, I either got the best number, which might have been the closer, or I beat the closing line. And according to a lot of professional sports bettors, beating the closing line on a regular basis is the key to profitability. And I guess I'm trying not to be results oriented, because going 2-6 is going to put you in the poorhouse pretty fast if you do that consistently. The one bet that I really got the worst of it was my parlay. I played a Green Bay Tampa Bay parlay, and I had Green Bay -6 and Tampa Bay money line, and I didn't get the best odds at -6, but I did get the best number according to SBR. The Pinnacle had Green Bay -5.5 at 1:05 p.m. on Sunday. I don't know anybody that can place a bet at 1:05 p.m. on Sunday, so I don't technically. I guess that wasn't beating the closing line, but if you can't get that number, I mean, it's impossible to beat that number if you can't place a wager at that number. So I want to feel good about how I did last week. I researched the games, I created my models, and I've talked a little bit about what I try to do as a handicapper and as a sports bettor is I try to create a prediction model for the games that I'm reviewing and look for the value, and then shop for the best lines and see if the games move in your favor or away from your favor. And I spent a lot of time, especially in the college games. There was about 65 college games last weekend, and I picked 4 out of the 65. There were a couple others that I looked at that I felt like had value, but if the numbers didn't get to where I felt like I was getting the best number, I didn't place the wager. So I felt like I was being very selective, and with the college, I feel like things really could have gone our way. I mean, it could have been a 4-0 day, but it wasn't. It was 1-3, and that's okay. It's okay. It doesn't break me. I was 1 game under 500 in all 3 football disciplines. I was 0-1 in CFL, 1-2 in NFL. And, that's the difference between being a winner and a loser. You got to be above 500 instead of below 500. So we're going to try to do that going forward. But the one question I'm asking myself this week, as I'm not trying to be results-oriented, am I betting too much or too little? I don't know. I placed 8 wagers over 2 days. And is that too much or too little? There was certainly a lot of... There were 4 CFL games. There were 65 college games. There were 15... If you count Monday, there were 15 NFL games. And I think 8 wagers out of almost 100 games is being pretty selective. And even though I had a losing weekend, I didn't chase losses on Monday. And there were 2 games, and I had opinions on both games. And I didn't make a play. And I even though I had the sides right on my modeling, I didn't play the games. I just didn't feel like I was getting the best of it. And the closing lines certainly weren't the best of it. Now, when I talk about frequency of wagering, I follow a lot of people on Twitter, and one person I follow and I respect very much is Alan Dinkerson, and he's Dink, as you know, written about by Beth Raymer. And he tweeted on Saturday that he had placed 250 wagers on Saturday. He said that was including group wagers, etc., etc. Didn't really specify. But holy cow, 250 wagers. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? I don't know. He said he didn't know whether he finished up or down, but he was exhausted. And I can imagine, because if you're really trying to focus on getting a profitable, getting in a good number or a profitable spot or a plus EV spot, however you want to slice it, that's got to be difficult to do. It's got to be mentally exhausting, and it's got to take a lot of patience, a lot of bankroll. I could probably splice my wager small enough that I could do 250, but geez, I wouldn't want to do that. I mean, I can understand if it's a live betting arbitrage. For those of you who don't know, they have in-game betting, but arbitrage is when you can place both sides of a wager. Early in the game, you get a great number on Team A, and later in the game, you get a great number on Team B, and you lock in a profit. That would have to be substantial limits to be worthwhile. I suppose if he had a group of players, they could all place in game wagers. And you also have to have one thing that I do have here at home is I have a pretty good setup to watch games over my broadband. But I got to assume that I'm watching games on at least a 1-minute delay, and that's got to hurt your EV for placing live wagers. It's not something I'm ready to tackle. I barely am at the point where I feel like I can tackle derivatives like first quarters, first half, second halves. I'm not there yet. I feel like my models are good for predicting totals for whole games and predicting spreads, but I don't think I have the time to dedicate, in-game wagering for 8 to 10 hours on a Saturday. That just seems like a lot of work for not a whole lot of money. However, there's one other scenario that I'm wondering out loud about, and anybody that has their opinions on what I'm talking about today, you can contact me through Twitter at Buffalo Hold'em. You can contact our podcast at BLNowPod on Twitter. Should I be seeking middle opportunities? And for those of you that don't know what a middle is a point spread or a total betting opportunity where you bet two numbers and you're hoping that the real number of the game lands in the middle. Let me give you an example. I had the Syracuse-Wake Forest game last Saturday, and I had under 44. And the number went all the way down to 40.5. And at that time, I asked myself, do I want to middle this game? And what I would do is place an over bet at 40.5. And then what that situation leaves me with is a middle where I'm hoping the total on the game actually ends up between the 44 and the 40.5, and I would win both wagers. Any other scenario, and I would lose one wager, win the other, and I would just lose the juice or the vig on the bets. Now, of course, if the game landed on 44, I would have won one wager and pushed the other. But that's how a middle works. And the question I ask myself when I saw that middle opportunity is, how often do middles hit to make it worth losing only the juice? So how many times do you have to do a middle and lose before winning the bet makes it worthwhile? Is it 1 out of 10 if you're paying 10% vig? And if there's only 15 weeks in a college football season, there's only 17 weeks in an NFL season, it's very feasible that you could go the whole season without hitting a middle. And if you have a point spread situation that goes around the 7 or around the 3 in NFL, I can see doing that even if the middle is smaller. If, say, you have 4 plus 4 and plus 2, that's a key number. So, it might happen more often. I don't have data on that, but the question about hitting the middle, if I believe the game's going under and I got the best number, I'm just going to go with that. So, I'm going to look for middle opportunities, but I really am just going to still try to get the best number or beat the closing line and see if that gives me better results going down the road. So my plan for this week is to be a lot more selective than last week, maybe half the amount of wagers. I haven't done my models yet. It's Tuesday afternoon as I record this. There's a fewer number of games this week in college. I think there's around 50 games. So I'm going to look at those tonight, and target a couple of games, see which numbers I can get the best. I can get the best of it on. I saw already the first game I looked at on the board was Clemson-Louisville, and I see that number's moved quite a bit already. I do like Clemson, but Louisville has been competitive in their 2 games. They didn't win either, but you got to see what I got to see what the model says. I can't really make any predictions on any games until I crunch some numbers. The NFL this week, I'm trying to do a little preview here for you. This is probably going to be an abbreviated podcast. I am just grinding football, and there's a lot of things I wanted to say about the first week of daily fantasy football. I don't know if I'm going to get to that today. I've just got too much going on. So I'm just going to look at a couple of things I wanted to talk about this weekend while I pick my games for the week. But I noticed the first week in the NFL that fading the public still seems like a very profitable strategy in the NFL. The Monday night games were a great example of that. Home dogs. Everybody was on, Minnesota to beat San Francisco. San Francisco is supposed to be under 6 wins on the win totals, and everybody's on Philly with their new quarterback. Chip Kelly's got them, nobody ever talks about the Philly defense. They got Kiko Alonso in the trade for McCoy, but it hasn't seemed to pay off yet. Atlanta looked good. They had a brain cramp early in the second half. Matt Ryan did to make that game close. But fading the public, both of those games were about 65% bet on the favorites. We're talking ticket counts. We're not talking money wagered. And home dogs, and especially have faded the public on a home dog, seems to really be the way to go. I did not do that last week in NFL. My model was very strong on Green Bay, and they came through. A lot of people didn't talk about how Green Bay had the ball on the 1-yard line with about 2.5 minutes left, and they didn't kill any clock. They just punched it in to go up 15, and that almost cost them a chance at the win, much less the cover. They won by 8, and they covered 6 points, but they could have killed about at least a minute to a minute and a half by kneeling a couple of plays before trying to punch it in. Also, in the NFL, I really believe not only fading the public, but fading the narrative. What you hear on ESPN or whatever your favorite public outlet is, Peyton Manning is done. He did not have a great game, but those teams both had great defenses. Mariota, the best rookie start ever for a quarterback, they played a horrible team. He'll come back to earth. The first week of the NFL, a lot of these teams don't show what they have, and during the preseason, they don't show what they have. Now they've shown their hands a little bit. I think everybody can agree that Tennessee was better than what the line said in week 1. Although that line pretty much didn't move all week. It was bet pretty evenly. You had 2 rookie quarterbacks going in their first pro game. Winston obviously wasn't ready, but who's to say he can't improve over time? I really thought Tampa Bay was the better play. Mike Evans not suiting up on the game day did hurt me because I placed the bet earlier in the week, but I had really good odds on the parlay, and I just decided to let it ride at plus 220. So, fade the narrative in the NFL. You're going to, there's certain teams, so right now in the Thursday night game, it's Denver at Kansas City, and Kansas City's a favorite. Kansas City had pretty easy time with Houston. Houston's in for a rough year. Somebody asked me which 6 teams not to make the playoff, and Houston was one that said nobody's paying attention to. They really have a really difficult schedule. So I don't think Kansas City really got the test that they were looking for. I think Denver, if you get Denver in the points, if I can get 3 points on Denver, I think that's a good play this week. Again, it's hard to make predictions without looking at my model numbers, but fading the public, especially getting home points, I'm really looking forward to the Buffalo-New England game. It could easily be another New England blowout. Buffalo's had a tough time with them. On the other hand, Buffalo has always kept it close here at home. That Buffalo has a very big home field advantage. So, really good games. The Monday night game, Jets and Colts, I think the Colts are going to bounce back at home. I think the real Ryan Fitzpatrick is going to show up at some point. He always does. So, see where the points go. See where the line moves. And in CFL this week, I'm not giving up on CFL. There's a total on Sunday. Winnipeg's playing at Montreal. Both teams, Winnipeg has an average defense. Montreal has a good defense. The total is posted at 42. It's the lowest total I've seen all season long. I think this is an automatic play on the over, almost an automatic play. It depends if Rakeem Cato is going to be playing. It's a Sunday afternoon game, and just on average, I'm not a big fan of trends anymore, but day games seem to go higher in points scored in CFL. I don't know what it is. It seems like there's a lot more special teams plays, big special teams plays during the day. But if Rakeem Cato plays for Montreal, I can see this game going over 42 pretty easily. So I'm going to look at the injuries. But with the NFL and college going, the lines really don't move that much on CFL anymore. But that's the play I really like this week, and that's probably going to be my play. Again, I have to crunch my numbers and see. But and I haven't really looked at the college games too much outside of the Thursday and Friday games. But the games that I targeted last week, they all seem to go over. So either my models need to be adjusted upwards, or the lines need to be adjusted. The lines will be adjusted upwards. I don't have a number for all 60 some odd games last week, but it seemed like a lot more went over than under. I know that Maryland game went under. It was bad weather. They stopped the game for a while. So, kind of rambling here today, but when you struggle with results, you don't look at it as variance so much. I just try to review my methodology and see, I pretty much accomplished the goal I set out to accomplish, was to either get the best number or beat the closing line. And, outside of my parlay, there was one game I missed the best number by a half a point. The Temple-Cincinnati game, I got 55, and I think it closed at 55.5. So other than that game and the parlay, I got the best number, or I beat the closing line on everything. And I got to just assume that I'm going to do better as the season goes along. I might have another whitewash this season. We'll have to wait and see. But I'm just going to target the games I like the best and continue looking for value. And I'll put up the plays that I like as we go along. You can check them out on my Twitter page. Again, I'm at Buffalo Hold'em. If you have any comments about the podcast or anything you'd like me to talk about, and you can also tweet the podcast at @BLNowPod. And, of course, our website is blnowpod.com. So that's it for this week. We're cutting it a little bit short, and maybe I'll have a little more to talk about next week. Definitely more on the daily fantasy sports. There's a lot of legality stuff that's very interesting going on there. I'm trying to line up another interview, and I got a few ideas and a few feelers out, so hopefully I'll have something there. So until next week, enjoy the games and bet like no one's watching. Take care.